Hey Aaron, excuse me. Hey Aaron, how you doing? Johnny Dingo, how you doing, buddy? Haven't seen you before. Welcome aboard. Yeah, it's been doing pretty good. Okay, Mike level great. Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, 9 o'clock. So let's get it on. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television (SBTV). I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Once again, if you are new to this channel, please do subscribe, or if you haven't done so, please do subscribe. Click on the bell to be notified of new updates, and do give us a thumbs up if you like what we do. We appreciate your support. Again, we thank you all for being here. I know for most of you, it's either Monday morning or Monday night. So again, thank you for being here. Good thing it's not football season yet in the US. Otherwise, I think none of you would be here. You'd be watching football, right? So I'm going to have to make sure not to do this on Monday nights very, very shortly. But again, thank you for being here. And you can always find us on social media either by going to our website at www.silverbullion.com.sg. Once again, .sg because we are in Singapore. Facebook, Silver Bullion SG. Twitter, Silver Bullion PL. PL for private limited. Or you can just simply type in your URL bit.ly and then SBTV iTunes or SBTV Spotify if you just want the audio versions. And we are on Telegram as well. We do have a Telegram group. Now let me switch over to that. We do have a Telegram group here, SB Crisis Tracker. And what we normally do is when we find some interesting news, we'll go ahead and post it, such as JP Morgan, where the Fed will need to restart QE soon. I think most of us, we're kind of understanding that already, where QE may look like it's coming down the road again. So again, on Telegram, if you do have Telegram, which is similar to like a WhatsApp or a Viber, go ahead and you can find us or join our group at SB for Silver Bullion, SB Crisis Tracker. Okay, so having said that, Johnny Dingo, hello, Grow Us, Australia. Sounds good. Thanks for being here. Aaron, again, thanks for being here. Sean, good to see you. Ohio, wow. Okay, thanks for coming in. Daniel McCarville, your show is thank you, Daniel, and we hope to provoke some thoughts today. I hope we're going to get our gears going in our mind, and because it is getting close to the anniversary of Nixon closing the gold window back in 71, and I think there for the U.S. it seemed all good for a while, for decades, in fact, but things are starting to come to a head right now, not just for the U.S. but for the entire world. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the what's going on with with gold, silver. We're going to take a look at how the closing of the gold window really had an impact and still has an impact to this day. I want to take a look at my Twitter feed real quick because I saw something interesting that came in, and I just want to share with you guys real quick. So here we see Boston Fed. U.S. currency paper is 75% cotton and 25% linen. No mention of gold, no mention of silver, right? So cotton and linen, that's what our money is today. And it has, again, it can fall back to the closing of the gold window as well. But I guess they're proud of the fact that it lasts longer than most paper, which is primarily made from wood pulp. So learn more about it here. So let's just go into this just a little bit deeper and see what the good folks at the Boston Fed have to tell us. When bills go bad, what happens when cash is no longer fit for commerce? The Fed monitors and shreds currency to make sure our money is always good to go. Monitor and shred, what does that mean? I guess it means when the money goes back to them, they have an excess of money and they shred it, and which I guess is that one of those definitions for a way to take inflation out of the system, where they're just going to basically destroy the money that's in circulation. Well, the bills are the bills people carrying are in the wall. The bills people carrying in their wallets right now have a variety of futures ahead of them. Some may be used for food or fun, others for bills or transportation. But their ultimate future is inescapable. They're going to get shredded, then destroyed by an incinerator or possibly turned into compost. Uh, for me, that means basically our paper money is end up going to be doo doo one day. Sorry for saying that, but there's no other way around it. Like all things, dollar bills, known as notes, around the Federal Reserve wear out over time and they need to be destroyed and replaced. Worn out bills can affect commerce if they are too dilapidated to be exchanged, and there's something else at stake in the condition of our country's currency, said the person at the Fed. It's the reputation of the United States, she says. It's the reputation. Okay, so hey, let's take away the gold, let's take away the silver, let's have a pretty piece of paper, and our reputation, the whole reputation of the US is based on this piece of paper. I tell you what, that's enough for me. If you want, you guys can read the rest of the article, where it's www.bostonfed.org, news and events. You'll find that article there. I think it's I don't know what to say. Okay, so the reputation depends on how durable that piece of paper is, or how nice that piece. All right, Fed, we got you. We totally understand. Okay, where waves? How you doing, Raimundo? How you doing? Thanks for stopping by. Uh, Aaron again. Thanks for. Aaron says time to invest in cotton. Okay, there you go. Most of our money isn't even paper; it's electronic digits. Thomas, that is true. You know, and that's I'll fall back again to where we had Brett Johnson, and he mentioned that, we have gold, paper gold, and we have physical gold, and we all know there's more paper gold than physical gold, and he likens that to the dollar. I mean, we have more electronic dollars than we do paper dollars, and for that reason, he feels it's wise, and a whole lot of other people feel that it's wise to keep those physical dollars on you, as best you can. I don't want to say as much as you can, but keep physical dollars on you, because if ever things should happen, people are going to try and get those physical dollars, and they may not be able to. And if you have those physical dollars on you, then it may be able to help you out at some point in time. So Tom is absolutely correct. Electronic digits, temporarily closed for 46 years exactly, thanks to Nixon. PM Ruckus, aloha, thanks for being here. uh, Robert Preston, what happens to the Fed when interest rates go to zero or negative? Don't they lose all control and power? Um, you know what? I would like to agree with that, but I think, just off the top of my head, I think it gives them even more power, because guys, we're stuck. I mean, we're not going to be able to save cash at that point or anything else. We're going to have to be spending it, because if we hold it, especially in the banks, we're going to get charged for it. And I don't think that sits well with any of us. So I think in that sense, the Fed may even have more control, or the government may even have more control at that point, if they do go negative, because we're going to have to spend our money and put it back into circulation. Okay, so silver and gold. Let's take a quick look at what's going on with silver and gold prices out here in Asia. Markets are opened. It's 9:09 in the morning. We're seeing silver at 17.17. It's come up since yesterday. We're seeing gold as well, 15.13. So both metals have come up again. Uh, they're kind of bouncing around right now, but they do seem to be on an upward trend. So that's good or bad depending on how you look at it. Good if you have gold and silver, bad if you haven't bought any yet. So do find some time to look at it and a purchase of two or two of gold and silver. It's not just an investment, it's an insurance. And I know you guys know that. Well, silver is currently inexpensive compared to gold at 88.1, which is the ratio. So right now the ratio is 88.1. Silver did touch 85 a couple weeks back. It's back at 81, but still, it's I think it's in a fairly strong position right now. And okay, so today is about Nixon closing the gold window back in 71, and a lot of us know what happened. Countries wanted to repatriate their gold, and if they were to take all their gold, then there wouldn't really be any more gold back in the US dollar, and that would be trouble. And so the US or President Nixon had to close the gold window, and there were a lot of things that happened once he did that. But there are things that also happened before that. So we're going to take a look at it. First thing we need to know is Bretton Woods. And so I found a little 1-minute explainer about Bretton Woods. So we'll give credit to 1 Minute Economics, and this is their explanation of Bretton Woods.
After World War II, it was clear the world needed a new financial system. The gold standard was considered too rigid, but at the same time, economists were worried that countries would devalue their currency to boost exports. For this reason, 44 countries sent delegates to a conference held in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, as of the 1st of July 1944. The US, which held 2/3 of the world's gold reserves after the war, was obviously the most influential player, and ultimately, all currencies ended up linked to the dollar, and the dollar was linked to gold. One important concern arose, though. If a country goes through an economic crisis, how can it get out of it without devaluing its currency? To address this issue, two institutions were created. One, the International Monetary Fund, which was supposed to lend money to countries that are in trouble and cannot attract financing from other sources. Two, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is now called the World Bank and was supposed to help less developed countries grow. Unfortunately, as good as it may have sounded on paper, the Bretton Woods system didn't survive because the United States kept running deficits to fund various projects, and therefore, the amount of dollars in existence kept increasing while the gold reserves of the US kept shrinking, as more countries demanded gold in exchange for their dollars. As such, on the 15th of August 1971, Nixon officially announced that dollars would no longer be convertible to gold, thereby putting the final nail in the coffin of the Bretton Woods system.
Okay, and so in Ron Paul's book, A Case for Gold, let me get to the right page here. He talks about a lot of these things. Again, this is from Ron Paul's book, A Case for Gold, not to be confused with Jim Rickards' book, A New Case for Gold. And he mentioned Bretton Woods. Okay, it looks like I'm having a little bit of a problem with that. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so he spoke a bit about Bretton Woods, which we just saw in the video. And what he wrote was, try as they might, countries just before World War II were unable to carry on unsound currency and fiscal policies without seeing their currencies depreciate. In terms of gold, their capital flee or their credit markets crippled. The only pre-war exemption was Nazi Germany, which achieved those goals at the cost of a complete and unprecedented economic regimentation. With the coming of war, other nations as well achieved far-reaching control over internal and foreign exchange. The end of war found government officials wishing they could retain those controls, which allowed them to inflate and run budget deficits as they pleased while still having access to easy credit, stable foreign exchange rates, and an absence of international flight capital. Sorry about that. This was the root idea behind the International Monetary Conference, IMF, back in mid-1944 Bretton Woods. Sorry about that. Let me turn that Telegram group off. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, which was in New Hampshire, and it set up the monetary order that would break down 25 years later. For while the new Bretton Woods system was supposed to restore the currency stability of the gold standard, it was designed to do so without gold. Amazing, right? The system placed its trust not in the workings of the marketplace, but in the judicious restraint of the American government. It therefore contained within itself the seeds of its own destruction. And these are the things that we're starting to see today. Um, let's see, Euro Q Duxmac. Euro is still rolling along, and they're all negative. Yeah, Europe is. I tell you what, that's going to be a completely different animal from anything that we've seen. Um, ECB lost control and power. I think ECB is starting to tighten up. I mean, really, really, really have more control. But we'll see where this goes. Um, what do you think of the coming cash bans due to negative interest rates? Well, I think the governments I think they don't want cash, or central banks anyway. They don't want cash. They do want to go cashless. And if you look all over the world, you see more and more first world countries anyway becoming more and more cashless. Thomas Tubes, you should only keep enough in your bank account to pay bills and avoid bank fees. I would agree with that. Just keep what you need in there. I mean, going back to I believe it was 2014 or 16. Sorry, I forget which date it was, where the G20 did meet up in Australia, and basically they gave the go ahead for banks to go ahead and take depositors' money if they need to, aka bail-ins. So it's already on the books. It's legal, in you want to use that term, where banks can go ahead and do that. Governments gave them their blessings. Um, not blessing, not in that way, but I mean, if they need to do it, a government is not going to stop them. That's more or less what I mean. Uh, Aaron, are there still places that give people actual paychecks and don't just use direct deposit? Feels like employees now are almost forced to put their paychecks right in the bank. Yeah, you know what, Aaron? I haven't been in the U.S. for a while. I left in 2005, but I do remember, especially in the military, we all had to have direct deposit, and it was something that I didn't like, mainly because even way back then, I had a tendency to not trust banks, and I didn't like having to have direct deposit. The military's excuse back then was, if in case you're sent somewhere, you're overseas, the money can still get into your bank account and you'll still have access. Otherwise, if the money went to you, you may not be able to put it in the bank depending on whatever theater that you may be in. So that was the reasoning we had back then in the military, was that it was a way to to have money go into your bank account so that you can still maintain your financial obligations no matter where you're at in the world. Sounded good at that time, but not sounding so good anymore. Uh, RGG chat, is Trump a racist person? Well, I don't know Trump personally, so you know, I can't say. But I tell you what, if I'm going to give an honest answer and put those two words on a scale, I would say he's not. He- He's not. He can be abrasive, yes, for sure. Um, a lot of people maybe don't like the way he's abrasive, but I mean, you got to remember he's a CEO. Okay, he just wants to get things done. Doesn't necessarily like all the red tape. But if you look at his history and even what's going on now, he's employed more minorities, I think, than any other president. More women, more African Americans. So I just off of those things alone, I'd have to say no. But like all things nowadays, it just depends wherever you're getting your news from. depends. All news organizations have a bias and have a slant these days, so it really depends. But I don't know him personally, so I'm only going off of what I see from places that I follow. Um, okay, Nixon closed the gold window in many countries, and especially the French began demanding gold for their U.S. dollars. That is true. That's true. Um, I think Thomas hit it on the head. The U.S. is very racist. It only supports the color green. Well, okay. Hey, actually, I like down. It's kind of funny. But so we had Bretton Woods, and it was supposed to be the new system that we were going to go on after World War II. And the thing is, there was something that came after Bretton Woods that not many people know of, and it's called the London Gold Pool. Go ahead and put that up for you. Get the page number. Okay, so the London Gold Pool. This came after Bretton Woods. Dollars flooded the world through the 50s, and a few worried about the gold reserves leaving the U.S. Treasury. But sometime in the early 60s, the market price of gold threatened to rise above the official $35 per ounce figure. So you look at that word there, threatened. Gold threatened to rise above the official $35 per ounce figure. For many years, the $35 figure was above the market price, making holding dollars attractive. In response to this rise in gold's price, the West's major central banks in 61 established the London Gold Pool with the U.S. in the lead. The banks agreed. I think there were six, seven, or eight or so nations into this, or banks that went into this. They all agreed to sell gold whenever the price threatened to rise above $35 per ounce. But this was successful only as long as the world inflation fears abated. However, by the late 60s, the world had paused to assess the effects of a massive dollar inflation pay for both the Great Society programs and the Vietnam War. The US dollar had now clearly become overvalued and gold's price undervalued. Britain was the first major nation to violate the fixed exchange regime by devaluing in November of 67. This caused a massive flight into gold. First of the post-war era, billions of dollars were spent by central banks in the next 4 months trying to force the market gold price down. Or what do you know? We were already having manipulation of the gold price back then. Finally, in March, governments threw in the towel and gave up, suppressing the market's wishes. We had Chris Powell on couple months back or so, and he explained it pretty well. And I just want to backtrack and get a refresher on what Chris Powell from GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. This is what Chris had to say about the London Gold Pool.
The two world wars kind of inflated currencies away, and they couldn't stick to a gold standard, and they went to dishoarding of Western banks' gold reserves in the 1960s. There was something called the London Gold Pool, which was a scheme of a coordinated system of dishoarding of Western gold reserves. The United States, the United Kingdom, I think six or so allies of the US and the UK agreed to work in London through the Bank of England to dishoard as much of their gold reserves as necessary to hold the official gold price to $35 an ounce.
Yes.
In 1968, the world began to realize that there was too much inflation in the system, that gold was very underpriced at $35 an ounce. There became a wave of offtake in the London gold market and through the Bank of England. The Bank of England was supplying increasing amounts of gold into the market to hold the price. Yeah. And in early 1968, the United States realized that it had only a few months left of gold left if the offtake continued at that rate. And so the United States asked the British government to close the London gold pool. And that point, the gold price technically broke free, but within a few years, I think starting in about 1971, the Western central banks decided that they could regain control of the gold price by creating a gold futures market and working through the futures market where paper would really control the price rather than real sales of metal.
Whoa, so Chris pretty much lays it out where paper price controls the metal price. And interesting how he said where they would dump gold onto the market to suppress the gold price. That's exactly what we see the paper market. Always see the paper market dump paper gold and push down physical metal gold price. Nothing's changed, guys. Nothing new under the sun. Central banks, governments, they've been trying to, or they've been manipulating gold for decades already. Some questions real quick. Let me take a look at the live chat. Central banks and governments want a cashless system. This is weird waves. For obvious reasons, they are beginning to try and pass these laws in Australia already. It's coming all over the place. True, true. I totally agree with you there. They're going to take away cash. This is what crypto is about. Waves. I'm going to play a clip on that towards the end. Maybe surprised with what this clip is going to say. Stephen Roy, for investments, what other options does an average person have to purchase stocks outside of the bail-in banks? Any thoughts? Steve, that's a tough one because almost everything is paper. I mean, you gotta, I would say, consider or look into physical, hard, real, liquid assets. One of the keywords, two keywords, hard and liquid. You need it to be something real, and you need it to be liquid if in case you need to get out of that position or asset fairly quickly to move into another asset. Hard, something real; liquid, something that you can move around fairly quick. Those are the things I'd be looking at, and typically guys are going to say, you know, real estate, gold, silver, more along commodities also because commodities they're real. In general, they are real things. That's what the world works on. We need. I think in general, commodities may be something to look at, but in general, people will say things like gold, silver, real estate. But keyword anyway, hard asset and liquid asset, real and something you can move around in case you need to move out from one asset in another asset. See, I noticed you are RGJ. I noticed you are selling nickel quite well. Yes, we do sell nickel. Why is nickel garnering interest these days from your customers? Um, oh, okay. I'll try to stay on the topic of gold. Sorry about that. But just to answer the question, because for nickel, there are in general two different classes of nickel: class one, class two, and class two nickel is used more for like nickel, pig iron, stainless steel. Let's call it construction types of things. And class one nickel is used for electric vehicle batteries. Class one and two nickel can be used for pretty much everything on the construction side, but only class one can be used for the electric car batteries. And so it's kind of strange where you have nickel that specifically is used for two different things, but there's only one nickel price. So some guys kind of look at it as, hey, wait a minute. With all of these mandates coming in for electric vehicles, they're going to need nickel. With automakers, battery makers using more nickel in the chemistry of the batteries, they're going to need more nickel. So again, this is class one nickel. So some guys are looking at it as hey, if it's only one price right now, it may be an advantage to go ahead and buy that class one nickel because that is a very specific use that it is going to come into play more and more and more. And I think out of all the nickel mine, roughly only half the nickel mine can be used for car batteries. So that's one reason I think why guys are looking at it, and also because these battery makers, automakers, they're buying nickel into the future. They need to get a hold of the supply because government mandates are coming ahead in the future. So they need to meet the mandate, and of course, that mandate is going to push the demand of electric cars. So things are starting to come to a point also. But okay, back to some of the questions. Um, in terms of metal value, U.S. nickel is the most valuable currently circulated. That is true. Stephen Roy, you're welcome, but always, always check for yourself. I mean, the way I may look at things may be different from the way you may be. So always, bit of a disclaimer here, but always, try to dig into things as best you can, make the best decision you can for you. Um, Philip, how you doing? Okay, bought some gold and silver yesterday. Price is already gone. It's starting to look good. Yeah, it's silver and gold are looking good. So, but anyway, so getting back to Chris Paul, he talked about the gold pool, and again, my question here was the London gold pool couldn't suppress gold prices, and the paper market was born a few years later. So, I'm curious to know what are your what's your take on this? I mean, is the paper market, who does it benefit? I mean, does it benefit the guys buying physical bullion? Does it benefit the speculators? Um, and again, was this really just another way to suppress price of gold? So we're starting to see these things where gold is becoming or gold should be worth more than what it is relative to the dollar, and so this is starting to spark some concern with governments and countries around the world. And you guys are right when I looked at some of your chat here where you talked about France. And France knew what was going on. Charles de Gaulle, he knew it, and he felt it was time to get some of that gold back. He no longer trusted the dollar, and this is one of the clips of what he had to say back then.
Le fait que beaucoup d'États acceptent par principe des dollars au même titre que
The
de
matter of
l'or
principle, accept dollars.
pour les
This is for the guys who are
règlements
just on audio. For the settlement of the differences
des
that exist
différences
to
qui
their profit
existent à
in the
leur
USA
profit
balance of payments.
dans la balance des paiements américaine, ce fait entraîne
In fact,
les
pushes the
Américains
Americans towards borrowing and
à
borrowing for free
s'endetter et à
from
s'endetter
foreigners.
gratuitement vis-à-vis de l'étranger.
Because what they owe them,
Car
they
ce
pay,
qu'ils
or
lui
at least
doivent,
parts
ils
of
le
it,
lui
with
payent,
dollars that they can print at will.
tout au moins en partie, avec des dollars qu'il ne tient qu'à eux d'émettre, étant donné les conséquences que pourrait avoir
Given the consequences
une crise
that a
qui
crisis happening
surviendrait
in this
dans un
particular
pareil
domain
domaine,
could
nous
bring,
pensons qu'il faut prendre à temps
we think that we should, before it's too late, take the means to avoid it.
nous estimons nécessaire
We deem it necessary that
que les
international
échanges
trades be established,
internationaux
as has been the case
soient
before the
établis
world's
comme
great
c'était le cas
tragedies,
avant les grands malheurs du monde, sur une base monétaire
on an
indiscutable
indisputable monetary base,
et
stead
qui ne
base
porte
not
la
bearing the
marque
mark of any
d'aucun
one
pays
country in
en
particular.
particulier. Quelle base?
Which base?
En vérité, on ne voit
In
pas
truth, we do not see that there
puisse
could
y
be,
avoir
in reality, any other
réellement
standard criteria
de
than gold.
critères, d'étalons autres que l'or.
Okay, so what he had to say was the currency system must be based on an indisputable money base that doesn't bear the mark of any one country. There is only one standard that meets this criteria or that criteria, and we all know that was gold. And his feelings on gold and the money printing that was going on from the U.S. To support things like the Great Society programs, Vietnam War, Um, de Gaulle, de Gaulle, he couldn't trust that all this money printing, or there was enough gold to back all of this money printing. And so we all know nations started to repatriate their gold, take their gold back. And the US could not let this continue. They needed that gold as well to back the dollar. They were going to really be put in a position where they were going to be challenged. And the US at that time could not allow it. And so we know what happened, where Nixon went ahead and he closed the gold window. And I think all of us remember that speech. And I'll go ahead and play it one more time as a refresher.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. Now, what does this action, which is very technical, what does it mean for you? Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar.
Okay, so when I saw this clip, to me it sounded an awful lot of things like things that we're hearing today. I'm curious if you folks feel the same way, where with what Nixon said back in 71, does it sound somewhat similar to what we're hearing today, defending the dollar, uh, unfair trade practices, things like that? I mean, it does sound to me like the same things we are hearing today. So I'm just wondering if it felt like that for you folks as well. Um, okay, thanks a lot, Nixon. Yeah, uh, thanks a lot. One of the bigger crooks. Yes, he did it. He sold the U.S. out. You know, there something else became of that dollar once he did close that gold window. So again, we had Bretton Woods. We had the London Gold Pool, which was supposed to suppress gold, but they couldn't. We had France and other countries taking their gold back. We had Nixon closing the gold window. We had the birth of the paper markets for gold. And things gradually started to get just a bit worse. But getting back to Nixon, in Ron Paul's book, The Case for Gold, he did, Ron Paul did touch on this. And what he said was, there's no question whatsoever that the problem of rising prices, although existent before 1971, has been made significantly worse since the closing of the gold window. And we saw this last week when we took a look at housing prices in, for instance, Australia, where we see up until about 70, 71, prices were generally held in check, meaning the economy looked to be growing, it looked to be stable, and that's because more than likely monetary supply, all the dollars in circulation, they were backed at least partially by gold. 71, no more gold, a lot of printing going on, and we've seen inflation start to come in really, really heavily with housing prices here. It grew exponentially, and it wasn't just Australia. It was also the UK. Did the same thing. Here's 70, 71. We see things start to take off. This is when Nixon closed the gold window. All the money printing happened. Money was no longer backed by gold. And of course, we see it in the US as well. And this is some charts that we showed from last week. Same thing up until about 70, 71. Things were stable because the monetary supply was stable. Our currency stable. And once closed the gold window, there was no more gold backing it. Took off. Inflation absolutely took off. So these were some of the perhaps unintended consequences, but it happened nonetheless. And we're still in that today. We don't have any type of a gold backing, and we see prices start to take off. And what had happened was, let me get here. So what happened was the dollar was no longer backed by anything, and we were we had to close that gold window. Other nations were taking their gold, and something had to be done. The dollar had to be backed by something, and I'm sure you guys know what it was, and I see it right there from Paul Hunt. Mentions the petrodollar. The U.S. was linked into oil trade after it was taken off gold convertibility. You know, Paul, you're exactly right, and I made a short clip on this as well, and it explains a little bit about what happened and why we are where we are today. Bear with me; it's a couple minutes here. Okay, so now we we see how closing that gold window and getting off gold put us in a position where we now link that dollar to oil, bringing forth the petrodollar by Kissinger and his negotiations back in '74 with Saudi. And more than likely, it is the reason why the U.S. is still involved in the Middle East today because of that deal, defending Saudi, defending oil. And the thing is, this petrodollar deal, it was made back in '74. It's outdated. That deal was made at a time when the U.S. was the largest oil importer, Saudi Arabia, the largest oil exporter. So this deal was made close to 50 years ago. Not exactly 50, but just under 50 years ago. And the thing is, the world has changed. You know, China, I believe, is Saudi's biggest buyer right now. And you have to understand, China is buying oil from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is selling oil to China. Why do they want to use the US dollar at this point? Makes sense, right? Why would you want to use another currency? And again, we looked at things a few weeks back. We look at Instex, INSTEX, which is the European adversary or alternative to the US SWIFT system, where Europe can go ahead and conduct their own conduct business the way they see fit outside of US dollars, avoiding any type of US sanctions or prying eyes. Um, they feel that this is what they need to get off the dollar. A lot of countries feel they need to get off the dollar. De-dollarization is happening, and some of it, or if not a lot of it, had to do or has to do with the petrodollar system, which is basically dying. It's an outdated system, and things are going to have to change. And we needed to change peacefully. That's probably the bigger thing. Um, Arthur, there's a Sense Act bill right now to change the composition to cheap steel instead of nickel and copper. Yeah, I've heard of that also. Um, let's see. M. Bellinger, 30% gold, 30% silver, 30% Bitcoin, 10% dollars. That's a good ratio to hold for now until a new world monetary currency is adopted. If if I could just tweak it a little bit, I probably would put 30% in dollars, 10% in Bitcoin. Mainly because if Bitcoin rockets like people expect it to rocket, then that 10% will still do you well. But if things go a little bit south where we need cash or whatnot, then you may want to have the cash. So I would just a little bit, but I like it overall. I like it. Remember Shane Clemens. Remember what Rothschild said, and then remember what Rothschild said, and then who in '71 really let his ideas off the leash. Repealing Glass-Steagall just nailed the lid on the middle class coffin. Glass-Steagall was repealed, I believe, under Bill Clinton's term, and it enabled a financial crash of 2008 to happen, where the retail banks, let's say the mom and pop banks, smaller banks, before they weren't allowed to speculate. Repealing Glass-Steagall or Steagall allowed them to speculate, and we all know what happened. People who normally wouldn't have been able to get a loan, they were able to get loans. Banks speculated quite a bit, and know where this went. So all of these, they are a product of Nixon closing the gold window, which then became the petrodollar. And as I mentioned, we're seeing countries like Saudi Arabia here. They're steering even more oil to China, draining the U.S. And to read this article just a bit, signals from oil tankers last month suggested that Saudi Arabia is sending an even larger portion of its crude to China, with the U.S. losing out. I'm not so sure about U.S. losing out because U.S. is producing a heck of a lot of oil as well. So I'm not so sure on that losing out part. Saudi Arabia's observed exports to China soared to 1.7 million barrels a day in July, the highest since Bloomberg began tracking the tanker shipments in 2017. At the same time, the kingdom's shipments to the U.S. appear to have tumbled to 161,000 barrels a day, the lowest during that same period. Now, again, we have this petrodollar deal where at that time, U.S. was the biggest importer. They're not importing from Saudi Arabia nearly as much as before. In fact, in some ways, they've even become competition for Saudi Arabia because the U.S. they are basically getting their own oil from their own sources. So, you have to take a look at it this way where, okay, Saudi Arabia does look to be moving on. We found a new big buyer in China. I would say it, you naturally have to think that the dollar's days are really numbered at this point. So just to read a bit more, um, the divergence illustrates the current state of energy geopolitics. Organization of petroleum exporting countries, of which Saudi Arabia is the largest producer, and a group of allies last month agreed to extend production cuts. A big reason behind the curve is soaring U.S. output, right? Which is what we just mentioned, which is near record levels in weekly data. U.S. inventories have dropped in recent months. Saudi shipments to the country have declined. So again, this is going to be a bit problematic. Um, U.S. made that deal with Saudi Arabia after closing the gold window. So hard to say where it's going, but surely looks like things are going to have to change. Some questions. Bellinger, where's your donation button? Subscribe and like it's good enough for us. Appreciate it. I've been watching your videos for some time. Thank you. But again, as long as you subscribe, we appreciate the thumbs up as well, and just let your friends know about us. That's the best we could ask for, and appreciate that. So thank you very much. Um, I enjoy. um, I don't see that happening anytime soon. But hey, if that ended up being my partner on the show, I'm not going to fight the change. I'll let it happen. Oh, let's see where that goes. That was the question where or the comment where it would be better if he had an attractive female assistant in the background. So yeah, well, if the powers that be want to make that change, I will abide by it, and I'll do my best to follow. Okay. Bretton Woods must be working overtime to come up with a new WRC or to beef up the existing dollar. Yeah, I don't know if they're really looking at beefing up the dollar or really just trying to get away from it altogether and bring in that new monetary system, because that does seem to be what's going to be happening soon. So, the question is, what is a dollar? Where is it now, and where is it going? What is a dollar was supposed to have been 300 and somewhat odd grains of silver. That was supposed to have been the definition of a dollar. Where is it now? It's the petrodollar. That's where it's gone to right now. Where is it going? As some of you guys mentioned, it's going into crypto. Um, I found this clip from James Rickards as he was doing an interview with Robert Kiyosaki, where he mentioned something that it makes sense. Don't know if it's going to happen, but it makes sense, and it's something that I think we need to keep on our radar, because closing the gold window probably also led to this.
Three-handed poker game, Russia, China, the United States. The way poker works, if you play the game, two people will gang up on the other, clean them out, and then they'll fight with each other for the rest of the pot. But if you don't know who the sucker is, you're the sucker. And you're going back to Kissinger, even before Kissinger, and through, I'll say even Bill Clinton and the Bushes, we always were closer to one side than the other to isolate the odd man out. So in the beginning of 1972, we opened up to China. We wanted to be buddies with China as a way of derailing the Soviet Union. But after 1991, we kind of cozied up to the Soviet Union to derail China. That's not always the same partner. You might have to switch sides. That's politics. But the United States was very good under Kissinger and Baker and others of aligning with one of those powers to diminish the ability of the third. But starting with Obama, we have no friends. We've completely, Democrats don't want to talk about Russian collusion, all this stuff. Well, fine. If you don't want to talk to Russia, fine. But now we're in a huge financial war with China because they're trying to undermine us. So we're not friends with China, we're not friends with Russia, but they're friends with each other, which was your point, Kim. And what they're doing, I talk about this in the book. All your Bitcoin people, Bitcoin. I say, forget Bitcoin. But don't forget cryptocurrencies. Russia and China are working on the technology for cryptocurrency. It's what's called a permissioned system, which means that not everybody can get in. It's like a club. They have to let you in. It'll be a new coin. It won't be Bitcoin. Call it a Putin coin or a Xi coin or whatever, backed up by gold. Russia has almost quadrupled its gold reserves since 2009. It's gone from 600 tons to today around 2,100 tons, on its way to higher amount. China, same thing. China's less transparent. We have to do some estimating, but they're in the same place. Why are they buying all this gold? Are they stupid? Or do they see something coming that we don't? Well, I have friends in Russia and China. They're not stupid. They see something coming that most people don't. And so you start this cryptocurrency. So now, to your point, Kim, China sells critical infrastructure to Russia. Russia sells weapons to China. Iran sells oil to China. North Korea sells missiles to Iran. Everybody goes to Turkey for vacation because it's a nice country. But the point is, you have this trading network with all these reciprocal buys and sells. Instead of denominating it in dollars, which has been the case, you denominate it in this new cryptocurrency. It's just a way to keep score. It could be baseball cards, but you just keep score. And then periodically you settle up. So I ran a deficit with you, I owe you money, or you have a deficit with Kim and you owe Kim money or whatever. But the point is, the net payment is always much smaller than the gross payment. If you had to pay for every shipment real time, that's gross. But if we just keep score in this cryptocurrency and net it down, that's a much smaller payment. And we settle up in gold, not the crypto. Crypto is a way to keep score. You don't have to move the gold around. You could, but you can station it in Switzerland and just change the name tags or whatever, which is what has been done in the past. But what's missing from that economic system? Dollars. There's no dollars in the whole thing. It's cryptocurrencies, gold, netting, and a permission private system.
Okay, so those were some pretty thoughtful words from James Rickards. Where, if we look at the question now, what is a dollar? Frankly speaking, I think no one knows. We're still trying to define or redefine what a dollar is. Where is it now? Again, it's still in that petrodollar phase, but that monetary system that it's involved in is going to change into a new monetary system. Where is it going? I think most of us are seeing it going into type of crypto. So the closing of that gold window, again, some 50 years later, whether these were intended or unintended consequences, you and I are living through it. Our children, our grandchildren are going to go through it. And so the thing is, what is the U.S. going to do if things should go this route with this crypto coin from Russia, China, gold-backed crypto coin? What does the U.S. do at this point if there are dollars or countries are de-dollarizing? A while back, I spoke to Danielle DiMartino Booth, and this is what she had to say. I think the Fed will come out with some type of crypto coin.
I think they have to. It goes to national security. I don't think they have a choice, because if the Russians and the Chinese are already there, then we have to have one, or they would have a tool with which to take advantage of us, and that we can't have that.
Okay.
So it's not a choice, and it's not something that they would necessarily. I'm heartened because Randy Quarles, who's new to the Fed, and Powell both have said, in deference to Ken Rogoff, they've both said that if there is Fed coin, it will be just as anonymous as any cash transaction would be. And that's the key, because the Russians and the Chinese, they're going to be watching what their citizens buy. They're going to be using sovereign cryptocurrencies as a means to monitor their populations. And that's what we can't have here in the United States.
So use the word national security. I'm still trying to fully grasp what she meant by using those words, or when she used those words, national security. But will the US dollar be replaced by some form of cryptocurrency? If so, will it be gold backed? And I think the other question is when we change from the current monetary system, go through that transition, go into the new monetary system, are we even going to want to accept anything government puts before us? Which is why some Bitcoin people feel that that's still the way to go with Bitcoin, where it's unbacked. That way, what they feel is nothing can be confiscated that way. But I think for the most part, people would still want to have some type of backing. We need to know that it's real in some way, but you know, I think it is headed towards a cryptocurrency. So from the history of a dollar, which was basically grains, silver, 300 and somewhat grains of silver made $1. Now it's headed to what maybe crypto. So we'll have to see how that goes. Um, okay, looking at the live chat, nickel full alert, 20K. Yeah, nickel has once again nickel has been doing very well. It's we're pretty high on nickel, and again mostly because we do see how future is going to be laid out. Future meaning governments have already said by this year this, by that year that, by that year that, by that year that. So we already know what's going to happen. Adoption will naturally follow once those mandates start to come into play. Um, I totally am Bellinger. I totally agree with him. Gold, silver, backed blockchain money. My exact thoughts during many China trips in the early 2000s, and knowing it's the only fair way to stop money printing devaluation. Yeah, I'm completely agree with you 100%. For guys that know me, they know there was a time I was into to Bitcoin, but as the price kept jumping around and as I saw more altcoins coming into play, the reasons why I bought Bitcoin were no longer there. I bought it as an alternative currency to how I felt that the dollar was going to get into trouble. We were going to go through a transition, and I still do feel the same way. And so I looked at Bitcoin as an alternative currency, no speculation at all. But when all these cryptos came out, I realized I don't know who the winner is going to be. I don't know if the winner is going to be Bitcoin, if the winner is going to be like Litecoin. I don't know. So I didn't want to take the risk. And so I left the crypto space. I mean, I'm still very interested in the crypto space. I still do think it's going to come back into play. But for now, the way I looked at it is I don't know who's going to win. I'm not smart enough to know which cryptocurrency is going to win, but I do think it's going to be backed by gold. And so I will just continue to buy gold and silver. So that was the way I looked at it. But it is because I do see a crypto coming in that will be backed by gold, silver one day. So not a bash on Bitcoin by any means. I do see it headed that way with crypto. I do see a place for Bitcoin, and I do see guys can do very very well with Bitcoin. So it's not a knock on Bitcoin at all. I'm just talking from a conservative viewpoint where if my reason for buying it was alternative currency, I don't know which one's going to be that alternative currency, but I do think it'll be gold, silver backed in some way. So I chose to go back into gold and silver. Again, not a knock on Bitcoin. I think probably you'd end up doing better than I will. But again, this is just from a conservative standpoint, not a knock on crypto at all. Um, let's see. Nathan Foot get into Fed coin early. Eagle. Kyle Bass bought 1 million. Yeah, Kyle Bass he bought a lot of nickel and straight away. It was instant. I don't want to use the word profit, but instantly he made out on that. Store bought copper is $35 per pound. Copper bullion is $16 per pound, just like nickel, twice its value. Yeah, copper's good. I do see a future for copper also. Uh, hello Frank. How you doing? Don't get me wrong. I'm a gold and silver bug, just looking at other avenues in the interim to obtain more. And Bellinger, yeah, sure. Like I've said before, we've seen guys go back and forth between gold and silver and crypto, and I think guys in crypto they do need stable coins. I mean, if you bounce around back and forth and trade and you make your money, and then there's times when crypto goes down not all the time, but when crypto goes down, all the crypto go down, and they need some place to park their gains, and that's where stable coins come into play, and that's where I can see a gold-backed stable coin coming into play and having a very, very real and good use. So I'm looking for companies that are going to bring that into play, and I think then crypto becomes a whole lot safer, and I for sure will be one to definitely jump right back in once these happens. Um, Special drawing rights was on the table. In Rickard's book, he Aftermath, he talked about the SDR, and he mentioned, don't hold this as point of fact, but he mentioned that it looks like 900 SDR is equivalent to 1 ounce of gold. And this came at about the time China came into the basket of SDR currencies. So, I mean, none of us heard much about this. I didn't know anything about it until I read his book, and he mentioned that 900 SDR is very close to 1 ounce of gold. So there are some guys who are speculating that back in 2016, the IMF pegged an SDR to 1 ounce of gold or somewhere around there. Again, this is just an observation from Rickards. It's not a point of fact, and I'm not gonna put words in his mouth, but it is in his book where he mentioned 900 SDR is roughly the equivalent of 1 ounce of gold. So maybe that reset actually happened, and none of us knew. Maybe it did. None of us knew, but fallout has yet to happen. Silver miners, Nathan Foot. Some people like him, some people don't. I tend to stick to physical. Uh, Give me a gold backed stable. Yeah, I'm all in on if it's a gold backed stable coin. I'm there. Um, Miners have been doing great. Let's see, I'm in PLM nickel miner. Glencore owns 70% in Minnesota pending permit. Okay. Yeah, Glencore, kind of interesting because some of you guys were talking about nickel. Glencore, they kind of shied away or they got out of cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And that's going to be interesting because, it, I mean, of course, it can go two ways where either they'll be looking for a substitute for cobalt or cobalt supply just got a whole lot tighter, which would push up the price. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So keeping an eye on nickel, keep an eye on cobalt as well. Robert Preston, to me, the problem with US gold is nobody knows if they actually have it. That's absolutely true. Um, I don't know why I guess it's a national security type of a deal. But next week, we're going to have David Stockton on. And he chimed in a little bit about Nixon closing the gold window as well. And the interview with David Stockton, I tell you what, or I should say later on this week. Yeah, coming up will be David Stockton. He laid it out. I mean, he didn't hold back anything. I mean, I'll give you a sample of what he had to say about Nixon and the gold window. August 15th, the 48th anniversary of the temporary closing of the gold window is coming up, where President Nixon, he temporarily closed it again back in 71. I know you're a young man back then, 71, still a young man looking good, but are you able to recall your reaction when you first heard about the US dollar not having a link to gold anymore? And how was the reaction from your colleagues or the nation in general?
Well, I was a young guy working on Capitol Hill. I was a legislative assistant. I didn't have any great training in economics at the time. In fact, I'd gone to Harvard Divinity School and had just gotten out of there and went to Washington and was working for a Republican congressman. But even with the limited knowledge and understanding I had at the time, it was a big shock because it was not Nixon was doing everything in that single event of August 1971, Camp David weekend, and the announcement on a Sunday night. I can remember hearing it come over the radio for some reason, as clear as a bell. But he not only, essentially dumped Bretton Woods and the link of the dollar to gold, but he put on wage and price controls on the entire economy and interest rate controls. And then they had a big increase in the budget in order to, it was all Keynesian stimulus. Every single thing that you could do wrong, they did wrong in that package. And one of the greatest ironies of history is that at the time, Nixon at Camp David that weekend was surrounded by a bunch of so-called free marketers. Okay, George Shultz, who went on to be famous as Secretary of Labor then, but Secretary of State, and I suppose was some great statesman, was there as the personal mouthpiece of Milton Friedman, and they told Nixon to sever the link to gold and have a float of let the market determine the value of the dollar.
So there you go. I guess one of the little known facts about when Nixon closed the gold window was he was surrounded by free market guys. So I guess would it be any surprise that paper gold came into play at about that time as well? It can be hard to understand what really went on at that time. What were these guys all doing? But not so hard to understand what's going on today, where we all are paying the price for what happened back then, with things we know and things we didn't know, such as Nixon being surrounded by those free market types. That wasn't publicized that much back in the day when it all happened. But getting to some of your final comments. Battery technology is using less cobalt. That is true. Kabuti, I just bought my first silver today. Good job. Good job. The hardest piece of gold, the hardest piece of silver to buy is the first one. Once you get it, you will find a way to continue to get it. So keep going. We wish you all the best in building up your silver or your gold inventory. Frank, again, if the Fed were to collapse, what will happen to Malaysian banking system? Well, I think Mahathir, the leader of Malaysia, where you're at, he's considering some type of a gold backed deal, and if he can get it in play, I think any country that has some kind of a gold backed system, I think they're going to do or fare a little bit better. And I know, here in Asia, I would hear quite often how the US dollar is a US problem, and a lot of people in Asia, they're not concerned with their currency. Or I shouldn't say a lot, but some people, they don't see the need to be concerned with their currency in Asia. But I always revert back to the Asian crisis back in the 90s. It was the Thai baht. The Thai baht, as small as it is, created a sort of bloodbath throughout Asia. So, I mean, you have to understand, if the Thai baht did that, what more the world reserve currency? So, I think all the more, this is the reason why countries want to de-dollarize, get out of the dollar before these things happen, and maybe get into gold or whatever else it is. But they do want to de-dollarize, and that's a big part of it. Let's just hope for the best for everyone. Let's see. Everybody watching should like this video. Yeah, why not? No, I'd appreciate the likes. Appreciate that very much, or the thumbs up. Thomas, when paper gold evaporates and we'll see the real moonshot. Yeah, you were responding to Faith. I completely agree. Silver at 1731. Wow, moving a bit today. What's going on in the world? I guess they read the article about Boston Fed saying a paper is made up of 75% cotton, 25% linen, and figured out, hey, I want my gold and silver in my money, not cotton and linen. Um, the Yeah, Frank, that is true. It also depends how much exposure the banks have. Um, I'm a gold and silver guy. I'm always going to most likely see gold and silver as an answer, but it's because a lot of the times it is. It is the answer to get back to where we need to be, where we should have been all along. So again, we saw after World War II, Bretton Woods, saw the London gold pool suppressing gold. We saw France not really buying into this anymore. Too many dollars, not enough gold. How can it be backed by gold? We want our gold back. And we see Nixon. I got to stop guys from taking this gold. Going to have to shut the window. Then we seen under Nixon again. Kissinger comes in, creates the petrodollar deal with Saudi. So now US dollar is backed by oil. Everybody has to use the US dollar because everybody needs oil. That was done at a time when US was the biggest oil importer, Saudi the biggest oil exporter. Almost 50 years later, it's not the same story. And we see countries that want to get off the dollar. They want to use their own currencies, and they are going to find a way to do it. And it's not going to be a good time for the dollar when these things do come into play. And again, that's another reason why people go into gold and silver. It's safe haven. It's a store of wealth. Um, People will argue whether or not it's a good investment, bad investment. But you know what? I think don't worry about the investment side of gold and silver, right? Just be focused on the component that this is your store of wealth when all of these things start to come into play. The investment side will come into play after. It's has a dual purpose, store of value. It is an investment, generational store of wealth, um, something that you can pass on to kids. But I mean, more importantly, it's going to get you through that transition from the new or the current monetary system to the new monetary system, because things are going to have to be valued against something. History tells us it's always been valued against gold, silver. Keep that in mind. A few more questions and got to get going. Um, AppMex is great. AppMex, if you're in the States, sure, AppMex is okay. I got nothing negative to say about them. JP Morgan has a bunch of silver. Yes, they do. They're not hanging on to it for anything. Uh, SD Bullion, I like their shows. SD Bullion, they do a good job on YouTube. I like them. Again, if you're in the US, these are some good companies you're pointing out. For us, our market is more, let's say, if our market has to do with storing as well. So if you want to buy and hold it, naturally you're going to be looking at a US company if you're in the US, if you're in Europe, things like that. But if you want to keep some of it outside of your jurisdiction and in a jurisdiction that is going to be favorable when these things happen, and with a company that they do own the vault, not a third party vault. They do own the vault where the insurance and everything, it's all things that we went and got and made sure that these are the things that are going to protect you. Third party vault is not necessarily looking out for these things because they're storing other things in there as well. They may be storing painting, storing, I don't know, maybe somebody's, whatever it is. They're storing other things besides the precious metals, and of course their standards are going to be different. And a bullion dealer who has a third party vault, they are always subject to the vault's rules. And when you're storing gold and silver in a vault, you want stability. You don't want to be exposed to someone else who can make all the rules. And that's probably the biggest difference between us and other companies. So if again, if you're in the US, you want to keep it with you, sure, AppMex, bullion, they're great. If you're thinking you may want to keep some outside of the US because that's probably going to be ground zero when things start to shift. You want to keep some outside. and you would be looking at a company like ours. And I don't, I try not to put in too many plugs for us, but it's what we do, and it's a service that we can help you with if that's what you're looking at. Because I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to do than you might think. And okay, so uh, let's see, John Smith, check with me this day next year. Let's see who. Right. Okay, Bitcoin is a deep. Well, those are definitely all topics for another day. But main thing, just be aware, know what's coming down the road. Get silver, get gold. With that, I'm gonna have to be heading out. And as always, thank you guys for being here. Saddle up for what's coming ahead, and silver up. Gonna be there when you need it. Take care of each other, and I'll see you guys again next week. Aloha.